You're listening to AIBiz, the show where we strip away the buzzwords and talk about how AI is actually shaping the work that we do and live. Right now, a lot of people feel like AI is this closed room, a conversation that belongs to researchers or coders and, the big tech boardrooms. And most professionals are on the outside looking in. But today, we are slowing that down on purpose. This episode is for the manager who nods in AI meeting but secretly feels lost, for the founder who knows they should be using AI but does not know where to start, and for the everyday human who just wants to understand what is really going on without needing a PhD. My guest today lives right at that intersection. He has spent 15 years actually building AI in the real world. From real time 3D reconstruction at Qualcomm to deep learning at Intel Labs to autonomous driving at Valium. He's an AI engineering leader, author, illustrator, and educator. His new book with Bloomsbury is called AI for the Rest of Us. It just released in the US, and think of it as an AI without the ego. No questions, no jargons. So, Sairam, welcome to AIBiz. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here with me today.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. Really appreciate it. I'm excited to chat with you.
Wonderful, Sarah. Yeah, I'm really excited to unpack this idea of AI literacy and what it actually looks like when we say AI is for the rest of us. So I would love to start there. You have said that most people feel locked out of the conversation, particularly of the AI conversation. So in your experience, what exactly do you think makes them feel that way? Is it the language, which consists of jargons, let's say, or do you think it's simply the culture around AI or something else as being?
I think it's a mix of factors, to be honest. The first one is definitely the jargon and the terminology, because
Mm.
oftentimes when you speak to people who are deeply embedded in the field, they will use terms that are frequently used in those circles,
Mm.
and and if you try to use the same terms for, say, like a business leader who is trying to decide whether to pursue an AI initiative, they will feel left out, because you go to a business executive and you talk to them about energy functions and minimization. You've already lost them, right?
Right, right.
And on the other hand, the reverse is also true. I'll get to that in a second. That's jargon is definitely one thing. The other thing is that if you really get into the trenches of AI, it's and I'm not talking about prompt engineering. I'm talking about building models or deciding whether a particular solution is mature or not from an engineering perspective. There's a lot of terminology. There's a lot of code if you're in the engineering circles, and if you're in the research circles, there's a lot of equations and mathematics. Each of these is beautiful in its own right, but I feel like there's a number of languages being used to describe the same thing. So it's kind of like that story where you have three blind men who are next to an elephant, and each of them has a different description of the elephant, which each of them are right, but each of them are looking or relating to a different part of the elephant. So none of them are actually seeing the full picture from the other person's perspective and so on. So that's, I think, the gap, and that's probably why a lot of people feel locked out, because whoever they speak to comes from their background, and oftentimes those backgrounds are uh, something that's earned over many years of being in those circles. So that's the reason why.
Yeah, that's very nicely explained, Sainam. And yeah, I think that's true. You don't actually need to know the. I mean, you should when you're working with AI, you should know what gradient descent is, but it doesn't necessarily mean you need to know all the mathematics that's happening inside of a model, all the propagation and stuff. But the point that you said really sticks with me because I think most people aren't intimidated by tech itself. They're intimidated by the atmosphere around it, right? And when the vibe in the room is like uh, keep up or get left behind because that's the kind of pressure, and I think that's when nobody actually learns anything. They just nod, stay quiet, and hope the meeting ends. And so I want this to, yeah.
No, no, that's a great point. I was just going to add that. it depends. Like for example, knowing gradient as descent really depends on your background. If you're an engineer who's
Right.
building these models, of course you need to know about it. But if you're a director or
With a
decision
leadership
maker,
role, right.
then you probably could do with like a high level understanding of, like, if your engineer tells you that the model isn't converging, you probably need to know what's happening there. But beyond that, nobody's going to expect you to fine tune the model yourself. And
Yeah.
your other point about people just nodding and waiting for the meeting to get over, I feel like that happens more than people would like to admit. And a lot of the reasons for that is that nobody wants to act the fool and actually say, hang on, I don't understand what's being said. Can somebody please explain this to me? Because then all of a sudden the way that they would be perceived by the rest of their colleagues and the people in the room would change, or at least we feel that. And without asking those questions, without understanding the full context, how are you going to take good decisions, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So you answered that beautifully, right? And my next question that naturally comes to me is that so when you talk about engineer, right? Yeah, you should know what a gradient descent is, but uh, when we strip away all the buzzwords, right? What does AI literacy practically mean for a working professional, let's say, who isn't an engineer, right? Let's say he's a business executive or he's into some other leadership role.
Correct. It means that you need to have a common language that you can speak with different stakeholders, and I'll sort of explain what that means. So, from an engineer's perspective, when your business leader comes to you and talks about P&L, beyond the very high level understanding you may have of what that means for you in your department, you may not really understand why it matters so much. And it's kind of trying to put yourself in those same shoes. Like when you talk to the business leader about model not converging or something not being feasible, the business leader in turn feels the same way when he's, when you, like for example, when you are hearing about PNL, and it's just, the reaction is the same. So just being able to empathize, and to be able to do that, to sort of remove that gap, I call it the translation gap. To be able to remove that, you need to speak the same language. And so that means to understand the basics of AI, and so that you can make smarter decisions. It's not like you need to understand the nitty-gritty of every algorithm. If you do, well, hats off, and that's good on you. But
Mm,
the key point here is, if you are able to tell your engineer why an initiative matters in a language they'll understand. Basically, say, if you do this particular project, our competitor is doing this, and here's why I think it's important from a business perspective. And then
mm,
the engineer comes back and saying, but technically, this is going to take X amount of months. It's going to take this many GPUs to train. Do we have the budget? And the conversation has to be in a level that both sides are able to understand the other party completely. And that level of AI, that level of shared understanding is what I consider as AI literacy for somebody who's not an engineer. You don't need to know what RLHF is. You don't need to know anything beyond the concept. You don't need to know the buzzwords and the jargon necessarily, but you need to know why it matters for you, or how it impacts your business, and how your engineering teams can leverage that. Or when your engineering teams come back to you and say, I don't think we can use this technique because of A, B, and C, you should be able to understand that, okay, there's a technical feasibility problem. At the same time, you should also be able to understand when your engineering teams come to you and say, I want to use A, B, and C, because they are excited about using the technology, not really because it drives the business's bottom line. So you should be able to understand when something is coming to you, from the perspective of an engineer wanting to try out the latest and greatest, and when the engineer is genuinely coming to you with a technical feasibility or limitation that you need to address. So that's the understanding that you need to have as somebody who's a business leader, in my opinion.
wow, perfectly explained and very insightful, rather I should say. I like that you're not saying that everyone needs to understand, say, uh, NLP pipelines or transformer architectures. You're saying basically know what it can do, what it cannot, and where it breaks. That feels more like learning how to drive a car rather than learning how to build an engine itself, because you have engineers for that.
That's a good analogy.
And
Yes.
yeah, and because right now I think a lot of people listening to this right now are sitting in this tension between fear and hype. They don't know what to trust, what to ignore, or what actually matters. And that emotional confusion is basically or usually shape how they respond to AI more than the tech itself.
Mm.
So I want to bring this maybe a little off topic, but I want to bring this to um into the picture that a lot of people, if they feel stuck between two extremes, right? For example, say AI will take a specific role or our jobs, right? Or AI will solve X, Y, Z,
Mm.
right, in future.
Right.
From your perspective, which fears are rational, and which ones are like more hype driven?
That's a very tricky question to answer, and
Yeah. For example, if I may also add,
Mm.
so see, the thing is, there's a lot of hype around, say, web development, right?
Mhm.
With some experts predicting that, and there are tools right there that can actually do the work for you, like in under a minute, right? Provided you prompt everything right, and you prompt everything right, and you basically explain what architecture are you going for,
Mhm.
right? But then there are people who's then later a month or two they come up and say, no, it's not the entire web development. It's just the design, just the front end part of it. The back end is still gonna be relevant. So, what's your take
Mm.
on this?
So I feel like there's never been a better time to be a really good software engineer. That's my first response to that, because yes, AI has made building prototypes insanely more accessible than ever before.
Mm,
What would usually take you an engineering team and maybe weeks of work is now possible in hours, possibly, and much fewer teams. And product managers, for example, are now empowered to build prototypes. They don't need to
right.
trade off engineers' times with the
Mm,
engineering managers. They can get customer feedback on what the users want, and immediately just mock up a prototype and then say, this is what I think the customer wants, have that conversation much faster. So in those senses, yeah, it's brilliant. But if you think about it, building full scale, like full scale software, there's a lot that
mm,
goes on into software. There's like, you have to think about how the software is going to, it's not just about building something and releasing it into the wild. It's also about maintaining it beyond the initial release. Because once you release it, as people start to use it, there will be an increase in load, and you should be able to maintain the level of service, whether it's one user or 100 users or a million users, right? That's the
mm,
kind of software that you want to build, and that comes from having that experience of what constitutes good software. And I'm not saying that it's impossible to use AI to build good and robust software. I'm just saying that it takes a very good eye and sensibilities of an engineer to work alongside it to be able to do that. So I don't believe necessarily that um, you know, AI is going to replace X or something like that. There are certain things that will be automated away, and that's for sure. But there'll always be an opportunity for your role to evolve, and for your skills that the unique skills that you have acquired over the years to be leveraged in the circumstance. So I feel like software engineers in general, if you have good design senses and if you have the ability to write and craft software that is robust, is well tested, and works under duress, I think those skills are going to be useful whether or not you use AI to implement a part of it. And the other thing that people forget
mm,
is sometimes AI might over engineer the solution, right? It might write
mm,
all kinds of extra features that you never asked for. And if you don't
right.
have an idea of what those are, you won't catch it.
Mm,
And those will probably come to bite you back, because the users will really not care about it, but it's maybe slowing down your app, or maybe it's exposing a security vulnerability. So just being able to understand all of that, and yeah, though I feel like it's a good co-pilot, but
mm,
saying that it's going to full scale replace a solid software engineer, I don't entirely believe that. Will there be fewer engineers needed for solving a particular problem in a project? Probably yes, that much I can accept. But are you going to tell me that end to end we won't need any engineers, and like a single engineer
mm,
can completely lead a team of AI agents to finish the work? I don't think that's the case yet.
mm. Yeah, I love that, and I totally agree to that. I think adaptability that we're talking about, and it's just spot on, Sairam, with that. And there are like real shifts coming. I agree on that. But the way to respond, I believe, is not sort of uh, panic scrolling. It is building literacy so people can make grounded decisions instead of reacting to headlines. And Sairam, I just want to talk a little bit about your book, which is aimed at leaders and professionals who need a language to talk about AI with their teams. Where do you see leaders getting it wrong right now in those conversations? Like,
So
if you could share an example.
sure. So I wrote about this recently, and one of the things that is important to recognize is that business leaders are under immense pressure. They are under immense pressure because the competitors are busy rolling out AI initiatives, and that's getting all the headlines. You see, startups with very few employees now building out insane products that are competing with sort of the incumbents in the same space. And as a business leader, you start to wonder, like, how do I get the same velocity? How do I make these decisions so that I can drive my team or my company's products forward? And there's a lot of pressure from the investors as well, right? There's like, oh, so see, company X has done this and company Y is doing this. What are you guys doing? So for a business leader, it's a very precarious position to be in. However, the other side of the thing is you just can't simply go to your engineering team and say, do this. X has done this, Y has done this. Let's go and do this as well. It has to make
Mm,
sense for you, right? And there's three aspects through which I look at it. I call it the LED framework. So leverage. The first one, L is for leverage, E is for evaluation, and D is for delay. And the idea behind this is that to really have an initiative that will work, that will make you stand out from your competitors, you have to have some kind of leverage. So for example, you take a company that has I don't know, 20 years worth of navigation data and route information. Let's say, like, you take a UPS or a FedEx, right? They deliver packages now, but they would have had like accumulated data of 20 years worth of trucks driving around countries, and
right.
they can then make decisions on which route is the fastest, because then they'll save on petrol or diesel. They'll save on the time it takes to deliver packages
Right.
efficiently, all of those things. It's a matter of several things. Now imagine them taking that data and actually building or fine tuning a model, and then using that model to drive intelligent business decisions, like which routes are most optimized along with real time data, and then compare that to another company that actually just says, hang on, I just saw this company implement this. We should do that too. We're in the same space. But they don't have any proprietary data. They just go take a model off the shelf and do the same thing. Which one do you think is going to be more effective? Obviously, the one that has leverage. And similarly, when you're evaluating, sometimes you always run into this as a business leader, which is you don't necessarily need to build everything in house, right? You can always find suppliers and vendors who build part of the solution for you. But then the suppliers and vendors will come to you with the best version of their demo. That doesn't mean that demo is going to survive in production or in real life. So how do you make sure that what you see in your demo is the same end result? How do you evaluate that particular solution from a vendor? Because it means it's going to cost your team, like if you pick the wrong vendor, it means it's going to cost your team months, not just to fix the damage, but also to rebuild or maybe go with another vendor. And that time is precious, right? Especially in the age where everybody is rushing to be the first. And then the third one is delay. Sometimes it makes sense to wait and not do anything in a rushed way. Like
Mm,
when somebody's trying to go in for a AI initiative, which might end up being hype.
mm,
And that's probably the hardest thing, by the way. So like just holding back and saying, you know what, I'm just going to wait and see how this plays out, because I think there's going to be a foundation model that does this particular thing in a few months time, and it's going to be like half the cost or a fraction of the cost for me. So I'm just going to wait and instead focus on this other thing that's also important for me. Just knowing to do all of these things, you need to have the basic understanding of the fact that AI, like language models, hallucinate. And when the question that you ask them is within the training data, they will give you answers that are generally accurate. But when you ask them something that's outside the training data, they're going to hallucinate confidently. So just being able to understand that, and then when your engineer says these metrics are going down, and being able to tie those metrics to business KPIs, like that's
Mm.
the kind of literacy that you need to build as a leader. Because when you are able to do that, then you can connect with different parts of your company, and when you do that, then you're able to drive holistic decisions.
Wow, that's such a clear breakdown. And honestly, it explains why so many strategy meetings fall apart. Where everyone is talking about AI specifically. Yeah, and Sairam, like, I really appreciate the way you gave such insightful facts around how business should operate, and how they should be tracking their KPIs and mapping them with what is that what is the problem statement that they are dealing with, right? And not just copying what company X or Y is doing. I think it takes so much pressure off people. And the big takeaway for me here is that engaging with AI doesn't have to be, this dramatic. It can be small, simple, and human. It's not kind of like build your own model before lunch. It's really just pick one workflow, try that thing, and pay attention to what actually shifts from there. I think that's the mindset that brings the difference. And Sairam, so before we wrap this up, I would love to know, for everyone who's listening to this and would love to know more about the LED framework, or perhaps it would love to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Oh, so yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, and just wanted to quickly touch upon a point. You mentioned that, let's
Mm.
see how something works and then go from there. That's actually a brilliant way to look at it, because AI development is an iterative process, and it's
Right,
probabilistic by nature. So a lot
right,
of the work that you're doing, you're actually taking a bet, and you're hoping that
right.
bet pays off and you're taking the bet with the best information you have available at the time. So it's important to go in with a mindset where you treat it more as an experiment from which you're going to learn, rather than a decided outcome. Where, for example, you take a piece of software. As a manager, for example, you were in days past, you could go and say, "Give me, I don't know, 5 developers, and in 2 months I'll implement this feature." You'll probably end up doing it, right? Because it's deterministic. You can predict the outcome, and assuming that everyone works as they should, you will achieve the results that you promised. With AI, it's like you say the same thing, you're not guaranteed of the outcome, because most times it will work about 80 to 90% of the way, but there may be edge cases you never considered, or there may be issues with the data, there may be issues with the model. And the worst part is, even after it works, there's no guarantee that it's not like success is like the end of the story, because when it works, more people will want to use what you built, and that means you have to start scaling it and then tackle new edge cases. So that notion that you mentioned about being iterative and looking at it from an experimental mindset is absolutely key. Now, coming back from that tangent, people can find me on LinkedIn. My name's Sairam Sundaresan. You can find me on Substack. I write a newsletter called Gradient Ascent. It's read by a lot of the engineers, product managers, VC analysts, and CEOs from Silicon Valley and all around the world. And of course, do check out my book, AI for the Rest of Us. It's written with leaders and engineers in mind. It's written in plain English and explains every uh, AI algorithm that, no, I shouldn't say every AI algorithm, but most of the AI algorithms, right from basic linear regression all the way to ChatGPT, in a way that you can understand without the jargon. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Amazing, Sairam. Dear listeners, to everyone who's listening to this right now, I'll include the details in the show notes for you so you can check them out anytime at your own convenience. And with that, we hit today's mark um, of this amazing and a very insightful and practical conversation with Sairam. And all right, we're going to land the plane here. And today we unpacked something a lot of people feel but rarely admit out loud, that sense of being on the outside of the AI conversation, watching it race ahead while you're still trying to decode the basics. So, if you're a leader, a creator, or just uh, an AI enthusiast, I would really encourage you to sit with the question, where in my work do I need more clarity? And then use that as the entry point. Saram, thank you for making the space less intimidating and more honest, and for writing AI for the rest of us as a tool that people can actually use on a Tuesday, not just admire on a shelf. So, to everyone listening, if this episode helped you feel a little less locked out of the AI conversation, share it with one colleague or friend who needs that same permission slip. This is Sayan, and you have been listening to AIBiz. I'll catch you in the next episode where we keep translating big tech into real life decisions.